one-timer. Score! Oh, it's over. It's over. They score!
That's game. Oh, my goodness. Big score. Roll the highlight reel. What a ripper. Top Jetta. Spread it on.
It's a huge episode of HNLive today. I'm Sean Mullen along with the birthday boy, Dave Dawson. What are you turning, 62?
135, it feels like, now that the Western Hockey League season is up for me. My body hasn't fully recovered yet, but 45. That's you get there, and pretty close to over the hill. So,
well, over the hill, you're off to New York. You're off to relive your youth. You're off to have your midlife crisis.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I'm gonna go buy my Lamborghini as well. So, yeah. I figured just have a nice little pocket. Going to go, out to New York City and take in some of the sights there. And there's no sporting events at all. March Madness is going on, but my buddy doesn't want to go to the March Madness in Boston. We're literally going to be in Boston when it's happening, but right. East Regional. But anyway, is what it is. Be a nice time to get away and get back to life when it comes back, because it'll just keep getting busy.
Yeah, regroup and fire up and get ready to head off to Peace River for the Junior B Provincials next week, right?
Yeah, that's going to be incredible. At the time we're recording this show, 4 of the 6 teams have been determined. Still 2 championship finals left, and there have been some upsets, some craziness. It's going to be a huge show for a lot of reasons today.
Yeah, a huge show for us. We're talking to Ryan Bartoshyk, who is the commissioner of the Alberta Junior Hockey League, who has not spoken to the media as of yet since 5 Alberta Junior Hockey League teams left for the BCHL. A number of things happening there. They're into their semifinal. It's been a great playoff. We'll talk to him about that. And also, Gord Miller of TSN is going to join us, Dave, to talk about the Hockey4Ukraine games between a U18 Ukraine team and a U18 Alberta All-Star team next week from the Max Bell Arena in Calgary. It'll be great to talk to Gord Miller.
Yeah, great fundraiser going on there. Gord's been really outspoken on social media and one of the most highly respected broadcasters I would say in the world, definitely in Canada and North America. So looking forward to seeing that.
And our program is always brought to you by Adrenaline Source for Sports, Calgary's premier store for hockey, lacrosse, and team apparel. Recently renovated and bigger and better than ever. A one-stop shop for all your sporting good needs. Visit us online at adrenalinegroup.ca. We fit your game. Adrenaline, a big sponsor of the Hockey4Ukraine event. Also a big sponsor of the Calgary Canucks, who've advanced on to the semifinal. And it's an exciting time, Dave, in the Alberta Junior Hockey League. 4 teams on to the semifinal. 3 of them, you were telling me, have never won an Alberta Junior Hockey League championship. So that's among the meat on the bone we have for our chat with the commissioner.
Yeah, never shy on topics for this one for sure. This can go on forever if need be. In Calgary, 1999, the last time they won the championship, the Calgary Canucks. The other 3 teams, Canmore, Whitecourt, and Drum, have never won an AJHL championship. So that and more, a number of exciting topics. And of course, the biggest topic everybody wants to know about, the BCHL, the 5 teams in the exodus to the BCHL. And the commissioner will address that topic and more. And to talk about all of that, now joining us is the commissioner of the Alberta Junior Hockey League. He is Ryan Bartoshyk. Ryan, in the 60th anniversary of the AJHL, now into the semifinals. What do you like so far from what you've been able to see?
Yeah, certainly exciting time, a year for us, and not only as a league, but for our athletes and for our communities as well. So, as we go on further here, the excitement builds and really looking forward to that experience for our athletes and ultimately crowning a champion this season.
And this year, certainly some new faces, some new teams, some new communities getting deeper into the playoffs. How much excitement does that build? It kind of had a feel of if anyone could win it. Certainly there's some favorites, but this year, as much as any, a feel that anyone could win it. How much excitement does that add to the playoff race?
Yeah, certainly with the play-in series, having all of our teams eligible to get to that point to ultimately hoist the championship was certainly exciting. And for our athletes to go through that experience. And certainly only one team wins every year, and you're going to take the positive and the negatives away, and hopefully down the road use those in your playing days and through your experience. So certainly excited for these communities and new for these communities as well in the most recent history. So again, looking forward to kicking things off here at the end of the week.
Yeah, and only one of those teams that are still in it has won an AJHL championship. Like, it couldn't be a better scene set for the semifinals. Good there.
Yeah, again, just going back to understanding where our communities are at and understanding this experience for our athletes. So as we move on, obviously the excitement builds, and again, it'll be a new experience for our athletes and the majority of these communities as well.
So, of course, the hot topic that everyone's been speaking about lately was the news broke, the 5 teams that left for the BCHL. And we've heard more of the one side of the story with varying opinions going throughout the hockey community. So would you be able to take us through how it happened from the point of view of the Alberta Junior Hockey League, or just from yourself?
Yeah, for sure. And for us, there was an announcement on Hockey Day in Canada that broke some news of our existing teams. And from there, as a league, we had to go through a process and really understand where we are at. With that, get some clarity on the situation. And that triggered a certain process within our bylaws and regulations that we had to go through to protect our league. And again, it was about getting clarity on the situation, understanding what was going on, who was involved, what intentions were. And for us, working through that process, there certainly was an opportunity for those 5 teams and those 5 communities to finish their season in the Alberta Junior Hockey League, but unfortunately a choice was made and that didn't happen. So for us, it was, let's move on. Let's understand where we're at as a league, move forward with our 11 existing communities and get to where we are today, playing for a league championship.
Ryan, was there any indication leading into that this was coming down the pipe, or was this somewhat of a surprise for the Alberta Junior Hockey League when it was announced?
Yeah, certainly a surprise for our league, and to get that on Saturday afternoon certainly wasn't ideal. And again, for us, that triggered a process, and not something that we had to overact with, something we had to be patient with, something we had to collaborate with our 11 existing members, with the 5 teams that were named in that press release, again, trying to get clarity on the situation and move through a process. But like I said, unfortunately, that process wasn't able to be completed. And here we are today with 11 teams moving forward and again, excited about crowning champion.
Were there any indications, you mentioned it was a surprise to get the announcement, were there any indications leading into it that these organizations had some major gripes with the current standing of the entire CJHL or the AJHL in particular, or were they coming to you with issues, or did it just kind of went off on their own?
We had honest discussions at our semi-annual meeting with all 16 members in the room, and for us, I mean, the phone is always on. There's always an opportunity to collaborate with our league office, to collaborate with our existing members. And like I said, when we got that announcement, we had to try and find and understand where we were at and get some clarity. And unfortunately, like I said, that's where we ended up.
Ryan, a lot of the chatter, and I'm sure you're very familiar with it on social media and the different media channels, that the information out there was no opportunity for the teams to continue, that it was essentially we stopped the season and they moved on. So you're saying that there was conversation to continue and allow these groups to finish out?
Yeah, most definitely. That was on the table for the 5 and for our group. So again, certainly no playbook for that scenario, and for us going through our bylaws and regulations and working with our members and going through that process, certainly that opportunity existed.
What kind of feedback did you get? I mean, from the remaining members of the league when this happened, how much unity is there now? How much determination to move forward? The conversations you guys had with the 11 remaining clubs after the departures, what have those conversations been like, and the spirit of those conversations? Yeah,
certainly support from obviously our group, but also outside stakeholders within the game throughout the process. Not only other leagues, federations, people that we have strong relationships over the years that we've built as a league. So certainly support there. And for our league, I mean, whether it's our first season, whether it's our 60th season, we're here to provide opportunities for our athletes. We're here to develop our athletes. We're here to engage communities. And that's certainly our goal moving forward. Certainly the landscape is changing, not only in our league, but as we hear discussions across the hockey world with the eligibility potentially of CHL athletes in the NCAA. We're moving forward. We're going to continue to build honest relationships with our stakeholders. And again, the priority is to develop athletes.
Yeah, well, it's a great segue there, Ryan. I think where we want to take it is, what does the future look like for the Alberta Junior Hockey League when it comes to retaining players and recruiting players at the continual competitive level?
Yeah, certainly. I mean, we've always been about choice in our league. That's not going to change. There's a lot of choice for athletes across North America to play not only junior hockey, but in sports schools and obviously with major junior in the NCAA. So for us, again, how are we developing our athletes? Are we being honest with them? Are we really understanding where they're at as people, what they need within our communities? Certainly a responsibility from our league, but as we go from there, a responsibility with our teams, our communities, our coaches, how we're developing those athletes to determine what level they are at right now. And I think as we move forward here, and like I mentioned, certainly the landscape's going to change. I think what that's going to do is really provide the athlete with the opportunity to be at a level that they are most successful at, to truly develop. Certainly over the last few years, everything's accelerated. We want to move here. We want to go there. Everything's pushed. Everything's rushed. Are we really doing what's best in the interest of the athlete? And for us, understanding where we fit, the relationships we have, the partnerships we have, the things we're talking to other leagues and other partners with behind the scenes to ensure that we can develop that athlete and then we can work closely with other partners to ultimately achieve it.
Yeah, you get a sense like maybe the landscape of junior A hockey in the CJHL is changing a little bit. I mean, these BCHL teams are so heavily focused just on the NCAA, but you mentioned the eligibility issue. If that were to change, how much that would upset the apple cart of their structure. And you're talking about more of a broad approach to, player development, player opportunity. Do you see the roles of junior A hockey teams changing a little bit, the partnerships changing a little bit, and the players that come here don't necessarily just have one goal in mind. They could have multiple different paths that they're leaning towards in that journey through the Alberta League?
Yeah, I think we still play an important role in that development for young athletes. And again, athletes and families have choice, whether they want to move across the country at 16 or 17. That's certainly their prerogative. But for us, I think there's an opportunity here to engage most likely the Alberta athlete more and understand how they fit within that process and where their development will best be served. So again, it really comes back to our league and our teams and that responsibility to ensure that that's happening.
Well, when it comes to your league and your teams, Ryan, where do you see the opportunity for growth now with, I imagine there has to be interest for expansion out there?
Yeah, certainly understanding where we're at with the 11 for sure, but encouraged by the communication and the feedback and some of those conversations we've had with existing communities and groups that are interested in the Alberta Junior Hockey League and do see the value of our league. So for us, it's something certainly we don't want to rush into. You step back a little bit, we still have such strength in our communities. I think we forget about the importance of those communities and having ownership groups and boards and volunteers part of those communities that are really ingrained in our team and really provide that experience for our athletes. So that's certainly a key initiative for us, is understanding who wants to bring teams into our communities, understanding how that impacts our existing communities. But again, for us, it's really community-based. Everyone's tied into our teams. It certainly is important to our communities and to our athletes to be part of it. So encouraging to see that to date. And again, something we're working on behind the scenes as far as where teams would be at moving forward.
Is growth possible? I mean, is the idea that if you have strong enough groups that come and say, hey, we've seen the change of the landscape, we've seen, that there's maybe a hole to be involved, and we want to have an opportunity. If you have a strong group that comes forward, is that something you're willing to listen to at this stage?
Yeah, certainly everything's on the table as far as considering options for our group. Again, we're about relationships. We're about building honest relationships with our partners and our members, and that's important for us. So to determine where we're at, again, with our existing 11 teams is important, but most definitely understanding about where those teams and where those people and where those groups are coming from is important for us, and we'll work through those processes as a board.
I know you probably can't say a lot about the white court situation right now, and we respect that. But when you look at the history of some teams in the AJHL that have been successful, and then you've seen a relocation and have had success, how much as a group as a whole of all the governors are you really protecting against? We want to make sure it is the right fit and it is the right community. And is there a heightened sense of this is the time to be a little more protective of those opportunities when a community does approach us and go, what are the long-term impacts?
Yeah, certainly. And to have that vision as a league is important. And again, for our group, just as we dealt with previous, understanding what's in place, the processes we have within our bylaws and regulations, understanding everyone's individual situations, but ultimately understanding where the community's at, how a team is involved, interacting with that community, and certainly something we have to consider moving forward.
You mentioned, a focus on Alberta athletes. Do you think this is maybe an opportunity to lean into being uniquely Albertan? I mean, any other league that you're going to be dealing with is going to have teams scattered across the prairies, right? Whether it's a junior A or a major junior level, you have Alberta communities, sometimes smaller ones than some of the other leagues. You're focused on Alberta players. Do you think that can be a real strength for you in strengthening your ties to the communities and the province as you focus in on that?
Yeah, certainly. I mean, we've always had a high volume of Alberta-born players on our teams and our organizations, probably more so now than ever. But certainly, opportunity to engage that group, understand the benefits of playing in our league, understanding the benefits of its development, and really understanding the benefits of where you can go from our league. And like I said, I think that's going to change a little bit. And for us, engaging other partners and engaging other groups where they can freely move between those different categories is important.
Where do you see the future, I suppose, Ryan, of the AJHL and maybe on the grander scheme in the relationship with the CJHL, maybe even other partners such as Major Junior in the Western League? Where do you see the landscape of junior hockey going here in the next couple of years?
Yeah, certainly things are evolving quickly here. But for us, again, and I mentioned it a couple of times, building those relationships, developing athletes, engaging our communities, having those honest conversations, and really doing what's best in the best interest of the athlete. And I really don't think that's changed since season 1 of the Alberta Junior Hockey League, where that group and those five teams that started this league were really intending to develop athletes and provide them an opportunity. So sure, names and faces and teams and communities have changed over the years, but at the end of the day, again, you circle back to that development piece. What are we providing? How are we doing that? We're being honest with the athletes, or we're being honest with the families, and really what experience are they taking away from the Alberta Junior Hockey League? And for myself, being able to play in this league 20 plus years ago, you think back and obviously understanding what's gone on over the past year. Really, for myself, it's an experience to be in those communities, to experience the game, to understand relationships with your peers, your group in the room, and you cannot take those experiences away. So to provide that development and to provide that experience for our athletes is just ultimately why we're here.
You talked about building relationships. I know we talked to Kyle McIntyre, the commissioner of the Saskatchewan Junior Hockey League, and he spoke about more collaboration between the leagues in the CJHL and maybe the leagues having more of a say in the direction of the CJHL. Have you guys started to have those kinds of conversations, and how important is it to collaborate with those other leagues, the commissioners, the stakeholders involved?
Yeah, certainly a great amount of respect for all the commissioners in those roles that do their job. And I think for us, understanding certain strengths and weaknesses in our league versus other leagues, different issues that those leagues face versus other issues that we face. And that's the challenge of us coming together. And we've certainly made great strides as a group over the past few years. But again, for us, we have to be the leadership of the group, understanding junior A hockey, and work with our members and obviously work with Hockey Canada to ensure that they're aware that, we're acting in the best interest of the game. Certainly, we don't always agree on everything, and certainly that's not the way things work all the time. But for us, understanding where we are, communicating that accurately, understanding the direction of this game is important. So hopefully we're going to continue down a path here where there's going to be more collaboration and realistically a few changes and tweaks to make our game better and that experience for our athlete better.
So, Ryan, what I'm hearing you say, the importance of that positive message, because a lot of the information that's been coming out in junior A hockey in Western Canada in the last 3 months is it's doom and gloom, look out, could it get any worse, oh no, right? But from what I'm hearing from you is that there's a real opportunity here to move forward and redefine what it looks like, and it could be stronger than it's ever been. Is that kind of what I'm hearing?
Yeah, I mean, certainly. We're here to provide that opportunity for our athletes. It's a valuable piece in their development. It's a valuable piece in their life. And for us, we're here working behind the scenes, really to make that experience better for our athlete. Again, certainly aware of options within the game. But for us, like I mentioned, let's just step back, gather information, understand where we are. Certainly strong organizations in the Alberta Junior Hockey League, strong organizations and leagues across the country, still providing that opportunity for athletes. So for us, that's our intention, and that's where we are moving forward.
Well, and you mentioned, the 60th year. It's a year of not only looking forward and looking at the current reality, but looking back and cherishing some of the history. And are there, some players or some moments or things like that come to mind as, you guys do get to celebrate the history of the Alberta Junior Hockey League this season?
Yeah, a lot of history in our league, a lot of work, a lot of great people who put in and laid the foundation for this league. And certainly things have changed over 60 seasons, and certainly things will continue to change moving forward. But like I said, those 5 teams and those people who started this league 60 seasons ago, we're here to provide opportunities for athletes, and that's going to continue. So certainly excited. I mean, every time I get to be around the athletes and see those accomplishments is important, and really exciting for myself. Getting to see the family support, whether that's at our AJHL finals, whether that's at the showcase, just seeing our athletes have the opportunity to be successful, to go through those experiences is what's important for myself. So certainly highs and lows, but take the highs and run with them.
Well, when a couple of the highs you constantly see lately are players signing NHL contracts. You look at Connor Unger, who had a brief stop in Whitecourt, Carter Geilander, if not for the COVID-19 pandemic, potentially might have won their franchise a national championship. And those imprints are AJHL players going to the NHL. Does it ever get old with the excitement that you see when the NHL players have come from the Junior A League of Alberta?
Yeah, it's certainly exciting for those athletes and those families, and maybe a longer path or a different path that's normal. And you look at a guy like Bobby McMahon. I mean, I was in Bonnyville just a few years ago presenting him with the AJHL MVP, and now put in the work and credit to himself and those teams and athletes that were part of his development to be where he's at today. So again, providing that opportunity for our athletes and letting them run with it and move forward and ultimately see where they end up.
It's such an important lesson, right? That there's no one path to get there, that if you're not exactly where you thought you'd be at 16, it doesn't mean that the road is closed. There just might be a different road to get off and back on, right? You see these guys go different paths and end up getting to the ultimate prize in the end. So sometimes players can be really focused on, that one thing they didn't achieve or that one team they didn't make. But if they keep pushing forward, a guy like Bobby McMahon ends up signing a multi-million-dollar contract.
Yeah, certainly. And I think that's maybe a foresight into the future a little bit as far as letting guys develop a little longer, potentially in our league, giving those guys the opportunity to really gain some equity in our league and truly develop, and making sure that they're on the first line, making sure they're playing special teams minutes, making sure they're in all situations where, you rush that athlete out of our league Perhaps he's sitting in the stands or on the fourth line. So again, that's the importance of our league. That's the importance of truly developing and the importance of being a little patient. And I know that's difficult for athletes, and there's advisors and schools and other people in their ear wanting them to get to the next level as fast as they can. But for us, certainly a great opportunity to keep those athletes in our league and really provide that development.
All right. Well, we're really looking forward as well to seeing the semifinal and final, and seeing the Alberta Junior Hockey League representative at the Centennial Cup. We're the streaming provider for Hockey Canada. So we're looking forward to seeing you there and seeing maybe a new team representing the AJHL this year than we've seen before.
Yeah, you bet. Appreciate it, guys.
Well, Dave, that was a fascinating conversation. And I don't know about you, but one of the things that stood out for me as the conversation went along, and he didn't say it outright, but there seemed to be a hint at possible collaboration with the Western Hockey League. I don't know if that was what you were getting from it, but, talking about players staying in the Alberta League a little bit longer and, developing a little bit more before they make the transition and having those conversations. It seemed like the door was open to some type of collaboration or conversation there.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how that goes moving forward. I think that, the important part is when you look at, the path, so to speak. And, you and I talked about when we had Kyle McIntyre on, Kean Bell into the SJHL and just the phenomenal career he's had. And there are a number of different players that have come up from the AJHL and then back down, come up, so to speak, from the AJHL and then back down. And even with the way that the NCAA rules are and those kinds of things, which we didn't really get into with the Canadian Hockey League or the CJHL on either level, I'd really be curious to see. And a healthy junior A, in my opinion, could work hand in hand with major junior, because you would want your players. Okay, you're in the major, in Western Hockey League, you're only getting 7 minutes a night. Okay, well, instead of having to go somewhere else, is there anything wrong with spending some time in an Alberta Junior League team and, getting a chance to be a point-a-game player, building your confidence back up, much like you would see in the NHL and the American League? I don't find anything wrong with that.
No, and it's not necessarily strictly that kind of relationship, but it's a different kind of hockey, and making sure, as he said, the player is playing the right level and the right situation to ideally develop the way that they need to. And there's a lot of different ways to get there. And he's the first that I've heard mention of league commissioners the idea that eligibility for the NCAA may change. That's a conversation we've heard in many different circles, the idea that the NCAA may open up eligibility to major junior players. And boy, does that, again, that's a conversation that he and other stakeholders in junior A and major junior hockey have to be having before that happens, because you don't want to get caught unaware and unprepared for a situation like that. And that could be a major game changer for everybody involved in junior hockey.
And I honestly think, though, when you look at over the last couple of months, right, a lot of the chatter on the social media, people saying it's doom and gloom for junior A, it's glorified junior B leagues and all these kinds of things. Well, no, I think the commissioners are well aware that the system needed some fine tuning, and now is an opportunity to fine tune it. Right. So I love the non-panic side of it. I'm not jumping around going, okay, let's do this. So maybe let's start a new league. And there's nothing like that. We'll just pause and wait. Just wait for the right opportunity. Let's sit down. Let's collaborate together. What does it look like when a player comes up from minor hockey in the Alberta Elite League to the Canadian Sports School Hockey League, and then their journey? Okay, they want to stay close to home. Great. Let's find a spot for you in the AJHL. And maybe, hey, Western Hockey League team might say, you know what? We'll take a shot at you, right? All those groups together, I think, have a part into play to developing, because you and I have done a lot of working with the Alberta Elite League and the Canadian Sports School Hockey League, which are the two primary feeder systems in minor hockey to develop players. And, just to the health of that continually, growing that relationship with the Alberta Junior Hockey League. And then if it does involve major junior, if that's where that potentially leads, I think that's a tremendous concept. And I love the fact that, again, they're doing it in a way that's slow, methodical, organized, not knee-jerk, just, in the last minute, just doing these things.
And he couldn't get into details, or didn't, but, I mean, we've both heard rumblings. There are people interested in being involved in the Alberta Junior Hockey League that aren't at the moment. And that interest in the idea of expansion or getting involved in ownership, I mean, if you didn't have a healthy league, if you didn't have a league that people wanted to be involved in, you wouldn't get that kind of interest. And we know it's out there. It's just a matter of how they approach it. And they're going to deal with it in a slow, I don't want to say slow, but a careful, measured way. And we'll see if that translates to any new faces in the Alberta Junior Hockey League in the future.
Yeah, and I know a lot of people watching us are probably waiting for some information on White Cord. What's the latest in that? What's the gossip in that? And, I respect the commissioner for not having the information that is readily available to present something publicly. I respect that. So, I'm totally fine with that. But I love the concept of, there has been some relocating over the years, right? There's been franchises that haven't had success and moved on. Your St. Albert's, your Fort Saskatchewans, obviously what happened in Calgary, Black Falls, etc. They're going to take their time to go, what's the best for this league moving forward? And I love the future of where that goes, and it's from what's happening with the BCHL and other junior A leagues, across Canada. I think it's paramount for the commissioner and other commissioners to get together and do it smartly.
And an exciting thing about the Alberta Junior Hockey League playoff this year, as you mentioned, Dave, 3 of the 4 teams in the semifinal have never won an AJHL championship before. We'll talk more about that in our junior hockey report coming up. One of those teams, the Calgary Canucks, is a partner and host for the Hockey4Ukraine event this week. Ukraine's U18 national team is having a training camp at the Max Bell Arena in Calgary, and there'll be 2 exhibition games on Wednesday and on Saturday against U18 Alberta All-Stars, helping the Ukrainian team prepare for the World Championship as they haven't had a chance to get together because of the ongoing war in Ukraine. And one famous national broadcaster has been a big part in helping make this event possible, as well as a previous tour for the U25 Ukraine team. And we're joined now by TSN's Gord Miller, who was awarded a Certificate of Merit by Ukraine's parliament for helping organize the tournament for the under-25 team. Gord, thanks for taking the time to chat with us today.
Thanks for having me.
So can you sort of take us through how this whole idea spawned?
Well, it began last year with friends in Ukraine, asking for help and asking for ways that North Americans could help. And the issue for, Ukrainian teams is they don't have anywhere to practice or play. A number of their players are in the military and others are scattered all over Europe and North America. So I was approached to potentially do a tour through Western Canada. And it was actually the idea of the Edmonton Oilers actually kind of put that bug in my ear. And so we had a team come over and play in university games in Saskatoon, Edmonton, Calgary, and Winnipeg. And we raised money for humanitarian and hockey causes in Ukraine and raised awareness. And it was a terrific event. And so the Ukrainians came back this year and said, their under-18 team is playing in the IHF Division 1A World Championship, which is one level below the main under-18 World Championship, and they want to make sure their team doesn't get relegated, for one thing, and they also want to make sure that their team puts on a good performance. It's very important for, from the Ukrainian perspective, to stay on the national and international stage. It's important to still compete internationally and not be taken off the stage. So I talked to Sandy Edmonston, who owns the Calgary Canucks of the Alberta Junior Hockey League, and he's put together 2 under-18 all-star teams that will play against the Ukrainian under-18 team. They'll train in Calgary for a week and then go to Denmark for the under-18 World Championship.
That's awesome. And what is it about this cause that sort of captured you, and how did you get so directly involved in it?
I do a lot of international hockey, and I spend a lot of time at international events, and I have friends from all over the world. It's one of the best parts of my job is to have friends from all over the world, and certainly the people that run the Ukrainian Federation are good friends that I've known for a long time. And when they ask for help, I think that all of us should do what we can to help people there and elsewhere. It's not a zero-sum game. It's not like if you help Ukraine, you can't help charities at home or help people elsewhere. But I do think that, it's very extreme circumstances for the Ukrainians. And I think that, when I was in Ukraine in September, I ran into a gentleman, a soldier named Alexei Lazarenko, who introduced himself to me. We were doing the ceremonial puck drop together and said, "We've met before." He said, "I played the 1995 World Junior Hockey Championship in Canada." And I said, "That Ukrainian team beat the United States. That's like one of the biggest upsets ever." He said, "Yeah, I scored the tying goal and the winning goal in that game." I said, "Lazarenko, yes, of course." And so we've stayed in touch. But I mean, his statement is simple. It's fight or die. And that's what the Ukrainians are facing. And so, a hockey tour is a very small thing, but we've raised a lot of money for humanitarian causes in Ukraine, which is important. And I think that just doing what we can is something we can all do.
I was talking to Alexandra, who's the vice president of the Ice Hockey Federation. She said, one of the main things about these tours beyond just the hockey is hope, and the idea of hope. Not that life can go back to what it was, because they can't expect that at this point, but that there are positive things to come. And when you hear stuff like that, and when the response to the big crowds that came out and what it meant to Ukraine, what goes through your mind in that moment?
Well, I think it's very important for Ukrainians to know, maybe now more than ever, that we are still supporting them and we still think of them. And I think there's some fatigue with the war in Ukraine. It's been going on for more than 2 years now, and the news cycle moves on and all these things happen. But I think it's very important for us to remind Ukrainians that we are still thinking of them, and we're still, making sure that they are very much in our thoughts. And I think that's something that, might get lost in the day-to-day for Ukrainians.
Certainly. And not to get into the political side of it, but just as you mentioned, you hear more and more the way the news cycle works these days, and the conversations that go off into very strange and extreme places. I mean, just talking to her, how much it means to have those crowds there, and it's not just about the hockey, but it's that moment to feel like we're really not alone, and that's very substantial.
I think, yeah, you're right. I think we're not alone, and we're still here. We're still standing. And I think that, Ukrainians are proud people, and they've been through a lot. And, for them, this began in 2014. This began 10 years ago when Crimea was annexed, and there's been fighting ongoing. But this full-scale invasion, is a relatively recent development. But for Ukrainians, their independence, their freedom, I mean, we value our freedom, we value our independence. It's not really threatened. We're not, we don't wake up in the morning and wonder, are we going to be overtaken by a hostile neighbor who's going to take away our freedoms and commit atrocities? We don't have to think about that. They think of that every day.
And from a hockey perspective, and this because you cover so much international hockey, if you just throw a team together that hasn't spent any time together,
right,
and just kind of cross your fingers and hope things are going to go well, good luck, right? So how important is it for this team to get this training camp time, to play a high level of hockey against the Albertan All-Star team? I mean, the difference they're going to have from that week versus just coming in cold together, I think, is monumental.
Yeah, and I think the coaches haven't seen some of these players in a year. So, I mean, for the coaches to see the players, to get a who fits with who's in good shape, who's not, who's ready to play, who's not, is really important. And I think that, for the Ukrainians, it lifts spirits in an incredible way. Their men's team played in the Division 1A World Championship and did pretty well. It's a reminder that someday things might be normal again. They'll never be the same again, but they might be somewhat normal again. And that's an important reminder.
Well, and as someone who's covered so much international hockey, there's more to it, right? I mean, this is a pretty extreme example, but is part of what makes it so exciting and such a joy to be a part of when you get to do it, is how much emotion is tied to it when you're talking about, playing for your country and some of the moments that come with it versus, just playing for a pro team or something of that nature.
Yeah. Being on the ice in Winnipeg at the end of the last game of the tour last year was incredible. 10,000 people in the Jets arena, standing, stomping their feet, waving flags. The Ukrainian players had tears in their eyes. The University of Manitoba players had tears in their eyes. All of us did. I think the best thing about the game is the people in it and the community of hockey. And, I remember we were organizing this tour, and I'd never organized a hockey tour before. And I was sort of swimming a little bit. And Mark Chipman, the owner of the Jets, said, I hear you're bringing a team to Winnipeg. And I said, yeah. He said, well, how about you use our arena? And I said, well, we can't afford to rent your arena. and it's a pretty tight budget. He said, "Oh no, we'll figure that out." And I said, "Mark, I don't know if we can sell that many tickets." And he said, "You don't know Manitobans very well, do you?" and touche. I mean, it was incredible. Just I think that on a day-to-day basis, when you spend time on social media and even conventional media, you can get pretty hardened and think that the world's a pretty terrible place, and in some ways it is. But there's a lot of really good people out there. There's a lot of the vast majority of people are really, really good people who want to help others, who want to be generous to others, who have empathy for others. And I think that's the biggest thing I saw from that tour, what I see with what's happening so far with this.
You got invited to Ukraine's parliament to accept an award for helping organize that event. I mean, to go during a war, what was that experience like?
Well, I was honored. I mean, a lot of people did a lot of work to make that tour happen last year, and I felt like I was representing them. I don't feel like it should be one person getting recognized, but I would say that there was a dichotomy in Ukraine of, it's obvious the war is going on. There's missile attacks and air raid sirens, and there's the ongoing fighting. But at the same time, there are kids playing soccer in fields and young couples walking hand in hand by the river and people going to outdoor cafes. I mean, in some ways it could be any, Kyiv or Kremenchuk or Lviv could be any European city, but they're not. And I was struck by that, but I think I was struck most by the determination of the Ukrainian people to have outsiders see what's really happening there and what has really happened. And I think that not through the filter of a lot of manipulated media and misinformation on social media, but to see what's really happening there is really eye-opening, and to see the resilience, the courage, and the determination of the Ukrainian people.
Just quickly on international hockey broadly, I mean, it's been a period of a lot of turmoil and transition. COVID, of course, everything that's happened with Russia, the lack of participation in the Olympics. Where do you feel like international hockey is? Is it a turning point now? The NHL is going back to the Olympic Games. COVID's a little bit more in our rearview mirror, and we're seeing more active international participation again. What's your feel on where the game is right now?
Well, I think one of the key questions is, what's going to happen to Russia in international hockey? And, Russian athletes are going to be allowed to compete in the Paris Olympics, a few of them, as individuals, not teams. As it stands right now, Russian teams are suspended by the IHF through the end of 2024, I believe, or maybe even 25 now. So will a Russian team be allowed to play in the Olympics in Italy in 2026? I don't believe so. Not as long as there's still Russian soldiers there. And it's going to be a long time before Russia is readmitted to play in international events, simply because Europeans want nothing to do with it. The security costs, the danger presented by having Russian teams compete on European soil would be more than most organizers would be wanting to deal with, which is why those Russian athletes, those handful of Russian athletes who do compete in Paris, will not march in the opening ceremony and may not march in the closing ceremony, simply because of the security concerns.
The biggest event probably that you do every year is the World Juniors. And of course, it went, through a difficult time during COVID, as did every kind of major live event. Where do you think that tournament's at right now? Is it getting closer to, that high level that we've been at before?
Well, I would certainly, tremendous tournament in Sweden, great crowds, excellent players. The Russians hadn't won a gold medal at the World Juniors since 2011. So, but they're a power, obviously, and they've got good players. But I think that, in the larger scheme of things, I don't think it would be reasonable or even thinkable to say, well, to make the tournament better, we got to let the Russians back in. The Russians can't be back in until they're out of Ukraine. And I think that's going to be a long time. It could be, it could be past the end of this decade before we see Russian teams internationally again. If I had to guess, I would say that we will not see Russian teams compete internationally before 2030. And that's 6 years away.
It's hard to imagine getting to that point, really, because the aggression would have to end. And
Right.
how do we see a time when that occurs? Because it's been creeping up rather than creeping down, right?
Yeah. I don't see it happening anytime soon. But I mean, obviously things can change, and there are those that would like to see it. But I mean, the attitude in Europe is very different than the attitude in North America. They're living next to this conflict, and so the attitude there is very different than what we see from some quarters in North America.
Certainly. Well, I've taken a lot of your time, but just for the fans in the Calgary area or around Alberta that could attend the games for the U18 Ukraine team against the Albertan All-Stars, what would sort of be your message to them? Why it would be a good event to attend, both from a hockey perspective, but just sending the right message.
Get there in time for the Ukrainian anthem, because it is. When you see it in person, when you see it sung, and you see the players lined up on the blue line, and you hear the fans singing it, it's an experience you won't forget. That alone is an experience you won't forget. But also a chance to see, some top level hockey and see some terrific hockey players. So the people of Alberta were tremendous last year, and I have no doubt they'll be the same way this year. And I'm a proud Albertan, and I'm looking forward to seeing how it turns out.
All right, thanks a lot, Gord. Really appreciate you taking the time to chat with us about it today.
My pleasure, Sean.
Great to be joined by TSN's Gord Miller, who's been a huge advocate for Ukraine hockey since the war. And we're certainly looking forward to being a part of Hockey4Ukraine. Again, Wednesday and Saturday, 7 o'clock Wednesday, 12:30 on Saturday. U18 Ukrainian team taking on a U18 Alberta All-Star squad on HNLive.ca, as well as live at the Max Bell Arena. Show your support and raise some money for Ukraine minor hockey as well. Dave, now time for our junior hockey report. And you wrapped up your season with the Edmonton Oil Kings as their voice. How much fun was that experience for you here down the stretch in the second half with the Oil Kings?
Yeah, no, it was Shane Falco, as I was laughing with a number of the guys involved in the organization, and 22 games to do that over 6 weeks, and back-to-back victories against the Red Deer Rebels on the weekend, 7-3, a game that was well in hand for most of that on Saturday, and got really nasty and physical, and then a game Sunday, 6-3 as well. The Edmonton Oil Kings, in a lot of ways, missing the playoffs by 9 points. You extend the season by 2 weeks. If they sneak into the playoffs, nobody wants to play them. That's literally how good they've been down the stretch. So I had a great chat with Kurt Hill, the vice president or the president and GM, during the broadcast on Sunday. Talked a lot about the future and talked about the potential that he might be moving a lot of picks this year. He wants to build a roster. He firmly believes this group can contend next year already, after a championship in 21-22, the worst season in franchise history last year. This year, 27 wins. It really feels they can contend next year. So it was a lot of fun. I'm glad I got that experience.
Well, it's unbelievable, honestly, for a team that was in last for much of the season to finish with 6 wins in their last 10, including against some of the best teams in the league. So absolutely, the Oil Kings are a team to watch next season, jumping right back into the thick of things. But we're into the playoffs in the Western Hockey League, and there'll be some certainly interesting matchups. The ultimate rivalry in Saskatchewan, the Saskatoon Blades against the Prince Albert Raiders. And while the Blades will be heavy favorites, the Raiders have certainly played some teams tough this year, Dave.
And I honestly think, we were chatting with us in the broadcast, that based on the rivalry, based on the proximity, based on the animosity, that series might go a lot longer than people expect. I don't think Saskatoon has that in forward. That could be a 6-game series with some tenaciousness.
Swift Current and Lethbridge. It's a rematch of the 2018 Western Conference Championship with 2 of the best goalies in the league. That'll be one to watch. Moose Jaw and Brandon. We just saw Brandon beat them on the weekend, Dave. So, you can't take the Brandon Wheat Kings lightly, no matter how much firepower there is in Moose Jaw.
I don't think you can, but I think for the Moose Jaw Warriors, when you get into playoff time, Moose Jaw put up 11, I think, on the weekend. So
Did you see the comments from Alan Miller?
I didn't see them, no.
He called out the Moose Jaw Warriors, specifically mentioning that he had been there for years and felt that his team was disrespected by the way that Moose Jaw ran up the score. Said he was hoping the same coaching staff was going to coach the Warriors next season when the teams play each other again, and that they'll have long memories. So really fired up that rivalry with Regina and Moose Jaw. I look forward already to seeing those teams play next season.
And a goalie fight to finish it all off, too.
No
so
doubt.
nothing wrong with that as well. That was a pretty exciting one. But I think, with all due respect to the Brandon Wheat Kings, they got some great prospects there. I think that is probably the sweep of the first round. I think Moose Jaw is just so top heavy. They have so much firepower. I don't think anyone's going to mess with them in round one.
Now, you just saw Red Deer and had a hard time with the Oil Kings, and Medicine Hat has kind of limped down the stretch. These are two teams that are very proud. It's a great rivalry, but two teams that maybe weren't quite firing at all cylinders right before the playoffs as well.
Yeah, what's kind of funny is Medicine Hat has a hard time defending, and Red Deer can't score. So between those two, it'll be an interesting rivalry. And I shouldn't say it has a hard time defending, but Medicine Hat this year, they've been up and down on the goals against situation, and Red Deer, Dave Strush taking over in early March, and they've had some games where they're having a hard time filling the net. But then again, they've had some important injuries. So I do think once the playoffs do start, what we saw at a Red Deer on Saturday and Sunday isn't what we're going to see next weekend. Medicine Hat, Gavin McKenna, 97 points on the year.
Wow.
He'll probably have a pretty good playoff as well. So I don't think that one maybe goes more than 5. I'd say Medicine Hat probably has that in 5 games.
Western Conference, a little more top-heavy as a conference. Prince George, Portland, Everett probably look like heavy favorites in the first round. The Wenatchee-Kelowna series should be really interesting as Kelowna was really hot down the stretch. Now, into the Alberta Junior Hockey League playoffs, and we talked to the commissioner earlier. You mentioned, Dave, and I think it's a wonderful story. 3 of the 4 teams in the semifinal this year in the Alberta Junior Hockey League have never won an AJHL championship before. So there are 3 very hungry communities. Well, 4 really, but 3 in particular hungry to hang a banner for the first time.
And Whitecourt and Drum have both made the finals over the last decade, so there's a chance for them to get back to the finals again. And Whitecourt, obviously, they're potentially the favorites, but Kevin Hasselberg and the Drumheller Dragons, don't count them out. And HNLive today will be doing a preview of the semifinals and the finals for the Alberta Junior Hockey League, so we're looking forward to that. So, but yeah, this is going to be an exciting championship run. And the Canmore Eagles, how about them? Making quick work at a Fort McMurray, only 4 goals against they allowed in that series, and upsetting Lloydminster, the highest scoring team in the league this year. So it's going to be a fun series, both of them for sure.
Yeah, 7th-ranked Canmore upsetting the 2nd-ranked Bobcats, and we'll see what kind of a fight they put up against Whitecourt. You have to think Whitecourt's the heavy favorite in that series, but the way Canmore's played in the playoffs, sometimes a team can get on a roll, right?
Andrew Milne is an incredible coach. The players he's developed over the years, he's an incredible guy, an incredible human, and a great hockey coach. And I think you don't count Canmore out at all. They have always played a high speed and up-tempo game. So Sean Martin, coach of the year, he's been able to do some pretty good things. And so, yeah, it's going to be a fun series. Calgary and Drum as well, by proximity, pretty close there. Kevin Hasselberg. And you just had a chance to talk to Brad Moran as well. So, Brad's a guy, and, an AHL American League player, NHL player over the years. He's built a great organization. Calgary were the basement dwellers for quite a while, and now right back up to the top. So much on the line, and it's going to be wide open in the semifinals.
Yeah, that's right. You can check out that conversation I had with Brad Moran on HNLive today on the weekend, a special edition of the program talking about their series at the time, as well as the Hockey4Ukraine event there as well. Elsewhere in Junior A hockey right now, in the OJHL, fascinating series between Milton and Leamington is tied at 1. Milton finished the season ranked 10th in the league. And Leamington's been top 20 for much of the season. So it's the first season in Junior A for Leamington after being the Sutherland Cup champions last year in Ontario Junior B. So that's quite a story there. In the Saskatchewan Junior Hockey League, they kind of mentioning limping down the stretch. Flin Flon kind of limped down the stretch, but they haven't had a lot to play for lately. And now getting into the playoffs, they've ramped right back up 2-0 in the first round against Kindersley, outscoring them 12-0 in the first 2 games. The Bombers look like a powerhouse that we could be seeing at the Centennial Cup when we're the streaming partner for Hockey Canada on hockeycanada.ca for the Centennial Cup. Steinbach ranked 3rd in the CJHL this year, has a 2-0 lead on Niverville in the MJHL playoffs. A lot going on all across the country, and as we continue the road towards the Centennial Cup, we'll continue to update you on the picture across the country. And the road towards the Junior B provincials in Alberta is getting a lot shorter, Dave. We've already got 4 of the champions lined up for what should be a great event in Peace River next week.
Yeah, it's going to be some brand new faces who'll be joining the Alberta Junior B Provincials in the pursuit for the Russ Barnes Trophy. Never count out Adam Huxley and the Wainwright Bisons as the Vermilion Tigers rolling right through the Northeastern Alberta Junior B Hockey League playoffs, undefeated. They're up 2-0 on Wainwright in the finals. You think it's all over. Well, don't count out Adam Huxley. The defending Russ Barnes Trophy champions have won 3 in a row, and they'll look to finish that out this week as well. So don't count them out. In the Alberta Junior B in Calgary, you have a new champion there. The 2-time defending champion Rangers were beat by the Stampeders on Sunday night. Final score 7-3 there. In a back and forth, 1-0, 1-1, 2-1, 2-2. So 5 games there. Stampeders won that. A brand new champion in the Northwest Junior Hockey League. The 4-time defending champions, the Fort St. John Huskies, in the 2022 Alberta Junior B Provincial Champions were taken down by Lacrete in 5 games. Lacrete, an expansion team in 2022. And on the weekend, the Capital Junior Hockey League has a brand new champion as well. The St. Albert Merchants, the finalists from last year, they lost it on the home ice to Sherwood Park. This year, they win it on home ice over Beaumont, Series 4-1 in that one. First championship since 2005. And the Heritage League is the one that's left to be determined yet. Still waiting for a champion in that one. So that'll be an exciting one as that continues this week.
Yeah, we've been following that closely on HNLive.ca, and the home team has won every game so far, Dave. And I saw game 3 from Okotoks, and Okotoks dominated the shot clock, and the score wasn't one-sided, but it was a game that Okotoks really controlled. I thought, well, maybe we're going to see Okotoks reassert themselves here. They swept Sylvan Lake last year, and, have only lost once to them in recent years. But then coming back on Saturday night with Game 4 in Sylvan Lake, it was a completely different story, a dominant performance by the Wranglers. So now we have a series that's brand new with a best of 3 on the weekend to see which of these 2 clubs is going to represent the Heritage League in the final. They've both been fantastic all season. The series has been everything we could hope for. And I it's going to come down to, can one of these teams win on the road? Is it possible, will the Wranglers be able to pull one out in Okotoks? Because if the home team just keeps winning, that's going to the Bisons.
Yeah, 6-1 final on the weekend for Sylvan Lake. And I almost wish we'd go back to an 8-team format in Alberta Junior B Provincial, so you could have Wainwright, Vermilion, and Sylvan and Okotoks both coming back again like they were last year because Okotoks hosted. So unfortunately, one of Sylvan or Okotoks has to win that series. The top 2 teams pretty much the entire year. Can't say I have a favorite, but man, that's some incredible hockey. You can catch those games on HNLive.ca.
And how cool was it to see? I mean, we both posted the picture, Dave, the watch party happening in Sylvan Lake, that the fans getting together in a local community bar and sitting and watching the broadcast from Chris Colwell and Matt Torgerson when the Wranglers are on the road just shows how much enthusiasm there is in that community for that team right now.
Yeah, that's what it's all about, right? That's hockey in your community. Get your watch parties together. And we have some incredible sponsors right through the community of Sylvan Lake and in Okotoks as well. And Sean's the guy you can reach out to if you want to have a watch party or you want your name broadcasted there. Just putting a pitch out there right now, you can give Sean Mullen a call. But that's great stuff to see, right? There's a great hockey community there in Sylvan. And, of course, Okotoks, a rich history there as well. I love seeing those things.
Time now for our top plays of the week, brought to you by Adrenaline Source for Sports, Calgary's premier store for hockey, lacrosse, and team apparel, recently renovated and bigger and better than ever. A one-stop shop for all your sporting good needs. Visit us online at adrenalinegroup.ca. We fit your game. Dave?
My play of the week is going to go to the St. Albert Merchants, winning the Capital Junior Hockey League Championship. I know that they've had a bit of a difficult season this year when it comes to coaching change late in the season, and many people were wondering, okay, how are they going to recover from that? And they had a bit of a blip there, ended up still finishing first, getting the bye. They were had the top record in the league the whole year. And congratulations, St. Albert. I know that you've been battling hard for that, and you've had some good teams over the years. Finally getting over the hump. They are going to be a force to be reckoned with in Peace River for the Russ Barnes Trophy.
My play of the week goes to Riley Toulon of the Sylvan Lake Wranglers in their dominant Game 4 victory at home against Okotoks. The 4th goal of the game for them on a power play. Puck kind of scrambling around the front of the net, and a terrific deflection by Toulon. You can see that just kind of floats over top of Nicholas, the netminder for the Bisons. Great hands from Toulon as that series is now tied at 2 with Game 5 in Okotoks coming up on Friday. A potential for a 3-game weekend for those two teams. before having to go off to provincials and coming right down to the wire there.
And yeah, great stuff by Frank Schulten from the St. Albert Merchants Championship. He got that footage for us there, and that special moment for St. Albert. And Frank has been a friend of HNLive and a number of projects over the last year. He did some great work with the Shore Park Knights, the Capital League, and of course, capturing the Capital League Championship footage for St. Albert. Thanks so much, Frank.
And for anyone who's a fan of Jimmy Kimmel, our apologies to our own Matt Damon this week. Scott McCrory, we ran out of time. Not really. We said we'd have Scott McCrory, the general manager for Oakville, on the show this week, but we're going to actually talk to him next week, the hosts for the 2024 Centennial Cup. It'll be a great conversation talking about the playoffs for them and how they're preparing to host such a special event. We're looking forward to being the streaming provider for hockeycanada.ca of the Centennial Cup again this year. Thanks, Dave and Alex. I'm Sean Mullen. What a show this week. If you missed any of it, rewind or check us out on any of our social media platforms. This has been HN Live Today.